My family treats me like a doormat. Now, they are planning a cruise without me. I'm not saying I don't love my nieces and nephews. I absolutely adore them. I have always been the first to offer help, whether it's a last-minute babysitting request, an emergency, or just a general call for assistance. Maybe I made myself too available, too willing, and now they take it for granted. But this? Not even inviting me to a family cruise? It feels like a slap in the face. Let me give you some backstory. My Aunt Jean, who is 65 years old, is retiring after an incredible 40 years of teaching. She is, without a doubt, the backbone of our family, the matriarch who keeps everyone connected. She never forgets a birthday, organizes every holiday meal, and even sends care packages filled with snacks and handwritten letters to the younger cousins when they go off to college. When I was in school, those care packages got me through finals week more times than I can count. She also helped me prepare for my first job interview, giving me advice and encouragement that I still carry with me. Aunt Jean's retirement is a huge milestone, and naturally, I assumed I would be part of the celebration. Well, I was wrong. It all started last week. I had just finished a grueling project at work, one that required late nights and meticulous coordination to meet deadlines for a critical system update. Exhausted but committed to my family's weekly dinner tradition, I still showed up at my parents' house with my mom's favorite bottle of wine in hand. These dinners have become a ritual ever since I moved out on my own, and no matter how busy I am, I rarely miss them. The evening was pretty typical. My sister Rachel, who is 32, scrolling through her phone while her toddler played with blocks on the floor. My dad was half watching a football game on TV, and my mom, who is 55, was fussing over what to make for dinner. Conversations flowed as usual, ranging from my niece's latest adorable milestone to my recent work achievements and, of course, the usual family gossip. At one point, I casually brought up Aunt Jean's retirement and joked about gift ideas, mentioning that I had been thinking of organizing a group present. That's when Rachel, without even looking up from her phone, casually said, "Oh, we're giving her a group gift on the cruise." I froze mid-sentence. "What cruise?" I asked, my voice tinged with confusion. Surely I had misheard her. I mean, I'm at every birthday party, every holiday dinner, every family event. If there were plans for a family cruise, I would know about it, right? Rachel finally looked up, her expression a mix of confusion and indifference. "The cruise we've been planning for months. All the adults in the family are going," she said, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. I turned to my mom for clarification, feeling a pit form in my stomach. She gave me her signature awkward smile, the one she always gives when she knows she's in the wrong but doesn't want to admit it. "It's a cruise to celebrate your aunt's retirement," she explained hesitantly. "We'll be spending a few days in Hawaii." I had the distinct impression that I was caught in some bizarre, hidden camera prank show. Everyone around me seemed to be in on this elaborate scheme, leaving me completely in the dark. The room suddenly felt unbearably warm and suffocating, and my heart started pounding as I tried to piece together what was happening. When I turned to my mother and asked why I had been left out of the loop, she gave me a strained little laugh. Then, as though it was the most logical thing in the world, she said, "Well, we thought you'd be more helpful staying back." "Staying back? Helpful with what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though my mind was racing. Before she could answer, my cousin Madison walked into the room, bundled up against the cold, carrying her twins, and everything clicked into place. "The children," Madison said, smiling like it was the most obvious solution ever. "You get along so well with them. It just made sense for you to stay and watch them." Let me break this down for you. Madison and Rachel have 4 kids between them, all under the age of 4. Madison's twins are barely a year old, and Rachel's kids are 3 and 2 years old. Somehow, without a single word to me, they decided that I would just love to spend my time taking care of all these children while they went on this big, exciting family trip. I stared at them, completely dumbfounded. My dinner was long forgotten as I tried to process this blatant disregard for my life and time. "So, let me get this straight. You planned this entire trip, didn't bother to invite me, and just assumed I'd be perfectly fine staying behind to babysit?" Rachel, who had been scrolling on her phone without a care in the world, finally put it down and gave a nonchalant shrug. "Well, yes," she said, as if the answer was obvious. You don't have kids or a husband or anything else tying you down. You're always so dependable. It just made sense. Made sense to whom? I asked, my voice shaking with frustration as I turned to my mother, hoping she would offer an explanation that didn't make me feel like a complete afterthought. But she just gave me a weak smile and said, "We didn't mean to leave you out, honey. We just assumed you would understand. You've always been the responsible one." The word responsible hit me like a slap in the face. It was a word I'd heard far too many times throughout my life. I was responsible when I skipped nights out with friends to help with family gatherings. I was responsible when I rearranged my college schedule to help Rachel after her first baby was born. I was responsible when I used my vacation days to support Madison through her exhausting twin pregnancy. Being responsible had meant sacrificing my own plans, my time, and my energy for others time and time again. Yes, I had helped with school pickups, stayed with the kids during emergencies, and even covered for Rachel at daycare when she had late meetings. Just last month, I took a half day off work to pick up her kids, and when Madison needed help organizing her house after the twins started crawling, I spent 3 weekends there, pitching in. But this was different. This wasn't just a call for help. This was a decision made for me without my input, as if my life and desires were irrelevant. My mother tried to smooth things over by saying they'd bring me a lovely souvenir from Hawaii, as if some trinket could compensate for being treated like the family's free babysitter. Meanwhile, Rachel had the audacity to suggest I was overreacting. "You wouldn't have liked the cruise anyway," she said dismissively. "You don't even like big crowds. Remember Cousin Katie's wedding? You were so uncomfortable there." I felt my anger rise. "Pardon me?" I said, my voice trembling. "I was recovering from the flu at that wedding 5 years ago, and now that one moment is your excuse to exclude me from family events?" It wasn't just an oversight. This was intentional. They knew I didn't use Facebook, so I wasn't part of the private group where they had been planning this for months. They could have called, texted, or even casually mentioned it during one of our many family gatherings. But they didn't. They chose to leave me out, plain and simple. I sat there, stunned, as the realization settled in. This wasn't just thoughtlessness. It was a deliberate choice to treat me as an afterthought, someone whose life didn't matter as much as everyone else's. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I could forgive them for it. At that moment, it genuinely felt like I was an unwitting participant in some kind of cruel, elaborate prank show. Everyone else seemed to be in on the grand scheme, while I was left completely in the dark, blindsided by the unfolding events. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, heavy, and uncomfortably warm. My heart began pounding harder as I struggled to make sense of what I was hearing. Confusion quickly turned into disbelief as I tried to grasp the logic, or lack thereof, behind what had just been said. When I finally managed to ask my mother why I had been left out of their plans, she gave me this tight, awkward laugh, the kind that immediately sets you on edge because you know something dismissive is coming. "Well," she said with a tone so casual it felt like a slap, "we thought you would be more helpful staying back." Staying back? The words hung in the air as though they somehow made perfect sense, but to me, they sounded utterly ridiculous. "Staying back? And helping with what, exactly?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Before she could answer, my cousin Madison breezed into the room, carrying her twin toddlers, both bundled up in matching outfits that only highlighted how tiny and full of energy they were. As if on cue, the explanation I was waiting for fell right into place. "The kids," Madison said, as though the word alone was enough of an explanation. "You're so great with them. It just made sense for you to stay and watch them while we're gone." Let me break this down for you. Madison and Rachel, my two cousins, collectively have 4 children under the age of 4. Madison's twins are just over a year old, and Rachel has a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. 4 kids. 4 very young, very lively kids, and somehow, without consulting me or even giving me a heads up, they had decided that I would stay behind and take care of all of them while they went on their little adventure. I stared at them, completely dumbfounded. My dinner sat forgotten in front of me as I tried to process what I was hearing. "So, let me get this straight," I finally said, my voice sharper than I intended.
You planned this whole trip without even inviting me, and you just assumed I'd be fine staying back to watch the kids?
Rachel, who had been scrolling through her phone the entire time, finally looked up, shrugged, and said, "Yes, of course. You don't have kids or anything else tying you down. Plus, you're always so reliable. It just made sense." "Made sense to whom?" I shot back, directing my question toward my mother, hoping for some semblance of an explanation that might make this whole situation seem less outrageous. My mother smiled weakly at me, the kind of smile that only made me feel smaller. "We didn't mean to leave you out, honey. We just assumed you would understand. You've always been the responsible one." That word, responsible, felt like a punch to the gut. It was not the first time I had heard it, and it likely would not be the last. For as long as I could remember, I had been the one everyone turned to, the reliable one, the problem solver. Whether it was staying home to help with family gatherings instead of going out with my friends, rearranging my college schedule to accommodate Rachel's first pregnancy, or even using up my vacation days to support Madison during her challenging pregnancy with the twins, I had always been the one to step up. Always. I had picked up Rachel's kids from daycare when she had late meetings, taken time off work to help Madison organize her home after the twins started crawling, and dropped everything at a moment's notice whenever someone needed help. And while I had done all of this willingly in the past, this time felt entirely different. This time, they had made a decision for me without even asking. They had not just assumed my availability, they had taken it for granted. My mother, in a weak attempt to smooth things over, promised to bring me back a lovely souvenir from Hawaii, as though a cheap trinket could somehow make up for being excluded from the trip. "We'll get you something really nice," she said, her voice filled with forced cheerfulness. Meanwhile, Rachel dismissed my concerns with an air of casual indifference. "You wouldn't have enjoyed the cruise anyway," she said matter-of-factly. "You don't like big crowds, remember? You were miserable at Cousin Katie's wedding." I could feel my frustration boiling over. "That wedding was 5 years ago," I snapped. "And I had the flu, not a problem with crowds." But it did not seem to matter. To them, that one event had apparently become the definitive excuse for excluding me from every major family event since. It became glaringly clear that this was not just an oversight or a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. They all knew I did not use Facebook, so I had been conveniently left out of the private group where the trip had been planned for months. They could have called me, texted me, or even mentioned it in passing during one of our many family gatherings. But they had chosen not to. And now, here I was, sitting at the dinner table, blindsided and betrayed, expected to pick up the pieces of their decision as though my time, my feelings, and my life did not matter. My mother tried to dodge my comments when I brought up how painful it was to be excluded, as if brushing it under the rug would somehow erase the hurt. "We had no intention of upsetting you," she said, her tone almost dismissive, as though my feelings were an inconvenience. "It was just practical, useful, and sensible for them." That was the explanation I got, as if reducing me to an afterthought was the only logical course of action. Her words lingered like an echo in my mind, cold and indifferent, as though my exclusion was a matter of efficiency rather than empathy. I left shortly after. I could not bear to stay in the room a moment longer. The emotions swirling inside me felt like a storm that I could not control, and I knew I would say something I might regret if I stayed. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember the streets or the lights. Instead, I was consumed by the memories of all the times I had dropped everything to help them, all the sacrifices I had made without hesitation, and all the moments I had set aside my own needs to make their lives easier. These thoughts were relentless, flashing through my mind like a cruel montage of self-neglect. The weight of it all made it nearly impossible to focus on the road. In the days that followed, my anger simmered into something deeper and far more unsettling. It was not just about this one incident, or even the exclusion itself. It became a harsh realization about how my family views me, not as an individual with wants, needs, or dreams, but as a reliable fixture in their lives. I am the dependable one, the helper, the fixer, I am the person they call when they need someone to sacrifice their time or energy, but never the one they consider when decisions are made. My role in their eyes is so ingrained that they do not even stop to question how their actions might affect me. I found myself replaying the conversation in my head over and over, dissecting every word and the feelings they left behind. And then, as if a floodgate had opened, memories poured in. Memories of all the times I had gone above and beyond for them. I thought about the sleepless night I spent with Rachel during her first child's colic episode, holding her hand and comforting her when she felt like she was at her wit's end. I remembered driving all over town with Madison, researching and testing strollers and car seats to find the perfect ones for her twins. I could not count the number of birthday parties, school plays, or family events where I had shown up without fail, even when it meant rearranging my own life. The more I reflected, the more I realized this was not a one-off. This was a pattern, one that had repeated itself so often that I had become blind to it. I had been so eager to be there for them, to support them, that I had not even noticed how much of myself I had lost along the way. They had grown accustomed to me always saying yes, always being available, always putting their needs before my own, and I had allowed it, thinking it was what families do. But this time it feels different. Something has shifted inside me. I am done. I do not know what done looks like yet, or how I will navigate this change going forward, but I know one thing for sure. I will not keep putting myself last. Not this time. I will not be the one staying behind to watch the kids or picking up the pieces when it is convenient for them. Not now. This time, they will have to figure it out without me. Reddit. Has anyone else been through something like this? Have you ever reached a breaking point where you realized your family was taking you for granted? I feel like I am standing at a crossroads, unsure of what lies ahead, but determined not to let this cycle continue. I would love to hear your thoughts and advice. I will keep you updated as I figure out what comes next. First update. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for all your supportive and encouraging remarks on my previous post. They genuinely gave me the strength to reassess my situation and take some decisive steps forward. Over the last few days, things have escalated far beyond what I initially expected, and I feel it is only fair to share what has unfolded since my last update. What started as me attempting to reconnect and find a resolution has quickly spiraled into a chain of events that I never anticipated. After reading through all your comments, I decided to take a deep breath and make one last attempt to be included in the trip. I told myself that perhaps a direct conversation with my sister Rachel could clear up any misunderstandings and help us figure out a way forward. So, I sent her a text, asking about the possibility of joining them on the cruise. I genuinely hoped that we could come to some sort of arrangement that would work for everyone. Her response, however, came swiftly and with a tone that was nothing short of dismissive. Sorry, the cruise is sold out. We made our reservation months ago and adding individuals now is simply not possible. I did not want to give up so easily, so I replied, explaining that I was willing to book my own cabin separately, even if it meant traveling to Hawaii on my own to meet them there or staying on a completely different deck. At this point, I was still hurt by being excluded, but I was trying my best to be understanding and accommodate the situation. Her reply to this effort was the final nail in the coffin. Well, you would have to arrange childcare first if you did come. Everything has already been planned, assuming you would watch the kids. It was in that moment that the harsh reality dawned on me. They had never intended to include me in the first place. The so-called childcare issue was not a complication to be worked around, but an excuse to justify my exclusion. To them, I was not a family member looking to join in the fun. I was the permanent babysitter. This was not about logistics or reservations. It was about roles that had been predetermined long ago. After sitting with that realization, I made a decision. I had already requested time off work for what they assumed would be babysitting duties, but instead of canceling my leave, I chose to reclaim it for myself. A coworker had once mentioned this beautiful mountain cabin rental, secluded, serene, with hiking trails and a hot tub overlooking a breathtaking valley. It sounded like the perfect escape. Without hesitation, I booked it. Within a day, my bags were packed, and I hit the road, leaving behind no word of my destination. The cabin was everything I needed. No Wi-Fi, no cell service unless for emergencies, and nothing but the peaceful hum of nature around me. The morning of their cruise departure, my phone began buzzing incessantly. It was flooded with texts before I finally turned it off for good. From Mom. "We're heading out in an hour. When can we drop off the kids?" From Rachel. "Hey, we're bringing the car seats to your apartment. Be ready." From Madison. "Are you seriously ignoring us? This is not funny. We have a schedule to keep." The texts only grew more frantic as time passed. From Mom again. "Please answer your phone, honey. Everyone is waiting for you." From Rachel. "This is unbelievable. You are so selfish. Our flight might be delayed because of you." From Madison. "This is beyond irresponsible. We trusted you." The cherry on top was Mom's final text. "I raised you better than this." The irony of it all? I had never once agreed to babysit. Not a single explicit confirmation had been given. They had simply assumed that, as usual, I would fall into line. It was expected because I had always done so in the past. Now, as I sit here in the peaceful quiet of this mountain retreat, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I feel something I have not felt in years. Freedom. There are no obligations, no last-minute emergencies, no impossible expectations looming over me. It is just me, the mountains, and a week of uninterrupted solitude. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I feel like my own person again. Do I feel guilty? To an extent, yes. I feel bad for disrupting the family dynamic and for upsetting everyone, but I do not feel guilty for saying no. The truth is, the care of the children is their parents' responsibility, not mine. One comment from my previous post still echoes in my mind. They are not angry because you said no. They are angry because they can no longer control you. That hit so close to home it almost hurt. Even so, part of me wonders, was I wrong to prioritize myself? Should I have at least informed them beforehand? I realize it might not have been the most mature course of action, but after years of being taken for granted, this felt like the only way to make them truly understand that I mean it this time. For now, I plan to savor every moment of this escape. I have a week to reset and recharge. Whatever fallout awaits me when I return, I will face it then. Thank you, Reddit, for giving me the space to vent and for helping me find the courage to finally stand up for myself. I promise to update you all once I am back and have dealt with the aftermath. Until then, I am going to focus on me for a change. Second update. Hello, Reddit. It took me a while to process everything that happened since my last update. Honestly, I am at my wit's end and desperately need some outside perspective. Things have gone from bad to worse. Do you remember that quiet cabin I mentioned in my last post? The one where I had hoped to find some peace? Well, those 7 days turned out to be life-changing in ways I didn't expect. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was free from the constant pull of other people's needs and expectations. I spent my mornings hiking along misty trails, letting the crisp air clear my thoughts. Afternoons were filled with books, titles I had been meaning to read for years but never found the time for. And at night, I soaked in the hot tub under a blanket of stars, feeling a kind of serenity I hadn't experienced since childhood. It was during those quiet moments that I began reflecting on my relationship with my family. The memories were sobering. Take last December, for example. Rachel needed help moving houses. Her timing? Impeccable, as always, coinciding with a critical certification exam I had been preparing for months. Yet, when she called, claiming no one else could help her, I caved. My career aspirations took a back seat to her convenience. And let's not forget Christmas. While I spent my entire holiday bonus buying thoughtful gifts for every niece and nephew, my siblings handed me plain, impersonal gift cards, citing their busy schedules. Then there was Madison. She pleaded with me to babysit her twins, conveniently preventing me from attending my best friend's bachelor party. This wasn't just an isolated pattern, it was my life. But the real chaos began when I got home. Remember how I turned my phone off during the trip? Well, when I finally powered it back on, I was greeted by a barrage of missed calls, voicemails, and text messages, hundreds of them. The contents ranged from guilt-tripping to outright threats. One message from Madison stood out. "Do you realize we could have called the police for child abandonment? They were supposed to be your responsibility." My jaw dropped. Responsibility? Since when did I sign up for that? Determined to address this absurdity head-on, I called her back immediately. "Are you serious?" I asked, incredulity dripping from every word. "You cannot hold someone accountable for responsibilities they never agreed to take on." Her response chilled me. "Do you know how much money we lost because of you? We had to cancel our entire trip. You were supposed to watch the kids." "Supposed to? By whose decree?" I shot back. "I was never asked. I was told. There's a difference." But she wasn't done. She began lecturing me about family obligations and how I had failed them all. Then she dropped a bombshell. "I've already spoken with my lawyer friend. What you did could be considered neglect." I snapped. "Your lawyer friend should tell you that consent is required before you accuse someone of neglecting a duty. I don't have legal authority over your kids, and my apartment isn't even child-proof. Did you ever think about that?" The call ended abruptly, but the drama didn't stop there. Rachel's messages came next. Apparently, her cruise was ruined because she had to leave her kids with a neighbor halfway through. "You've ruined Aunt Jean's retirement celebration," she wrote. "Your selfishness affected everyone's trip." The hypocrisy stung even more because just last month, when I had a minor medical procedure and needed a ride home, neither Rachel nor Madison was available. Rachel had a hair appointment, and Madison had errands. I ended up paying for a rideshare. Even my mom got in on the act, calling me at work. Her voice dripped with disappointment. "Your sister had to cut her trip short," she began. "Do you really want to be this person?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, is this about who you all want me to be, or about who I actually am?" "What do you mean by that?" she asked, clearly caught off guard. "It means I'm done being the family's unpaid babysitter. None of you consider that I have my own life, career, and goals," I said, my voice steady but firm. Her response? "We're family. Families help each other."
Help, I emphasized, is something freely given, not demanded. What you're talking about is obligation. And when was the last time any of you helped me?
The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. But the pièce de résistance came when my sister aired our dirty laundry on Facebook. She posted cryptic yet unmistakably hostile statuses about toxic family members who don't respect family values. Extended relatives chimed in, making comments like, "Some people forget where they came from," and "blood is thicker than water." These were the same people who had excluded me from family gatherings in the past. To top it all off, Madison emailed me a detailed list of expenses she claimed I was responsible for, including daycare fees, travel changes, and canceled cruise tickets. She demanded I reimburse her. When I showed the messages to a lawyer friend, not just a friend who knows a lawyer, she laughed out loud.
"They can't legally make you pay for plans you never agreed to,"
she assured me. This ordeal has taught me an invaluable lesson. This isn't just about babysitting. It's about years of emotional manipulation and exploitation. My time and energy have been treated like a resource they are entitled to, and any attempt to reclaim those for myself is met with outrage. I've started seeing a therapist to help me navigate this mess. She pointed out that the threats, guilt-tripping, and financial demands are all signs that my family is struggling to cope with losing control over me. The only silver lining has been my friend Antigen. When she called me yesterday, her words brought me to tears. "I had no idea they treated you like this. Family is not supposed to be like this." But even her support cannot erase the hurt. To my family, I am not a sister, daughter, or cousin. I am a safety net, a backup plan, and a free childcare service. Moving forward, I know I need to establish firm boundaries, but I'm struggling to figure out what those should look like. Part of me wants to cut off all communication, at least for a while. But another part feels immense guilt at the very thought. Reddit, what would you do in my shoes? How do you set boundaries with people who do not even acknowledge the concept? Have any of you been through something similar? Third update, and this will be my last update on this situation. Please bear with me as I share everything I have learned and experienced in the past few weeks. What started as a seemingly small family trip spiraled into something much larger, forcing me to confront years of unresolved issues, unspoken boundaries, and hard truths about my role within my family. While painful, this has been transformative for me in ways I never anticipated.
These past few weeks have been nothing short of life-altering. For years, I have been the go-to person for every family crisis, the one who drops everything to fix problems that were not mine to begin with. But something shifted after that trip. It dawned on me how much of my energy, time, and mental bandwidth had been consumed by family drama. Stepping away from this dynamic has been like peeling off a heavy layer of burden that I didn't realize I was carrying. Without that constant pressure, my professional life has taken an upward trajectory. I am now leading a major project at work, a position I never would have been considered for if I were still tethered to my family's incessant demands. My manager even pulled me aside last week to tell me, "You seem like a whole new person. Your focus and energy are remarkable." That comment made me pause and reflect. I hadn't fully realized just how much my family's needs and expectations had been draining me until I was free of them. But the turning point wasn't work-related. It came during a phone call I had been dreading, the conversation with my mother. I knew it was coming. I knew it would be the hardest conversation to have because, despite everything, I love her deeply. But I also knew that love alone could no longer excuse the way I had been treated. When she answered, her voice was full of hope. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you called. Let's put all this behind us, okay? I just want us to move forward." Her words were meant to soothe, but they didn't sit right with me. I took a deep breath and responded as calmly as I could. "Mom, this isn't about fighting or moving on. It's about boundaries. I need space, and I need you to respect that." Her tone changed instantly. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her worry creeping into the conversation. I explained, gently but firmly, that while I still loved her, I couldn't continue being part of a family that dismissed my feelings and treated me as nothing more than a resource to solve their problems. I told her how painful it was to face manipulation, guilt-tripping, and constant accusations every time I tried to stand up for myself. Her response was as predictable as it was heartbreaking. She started to cry, asking, "So, you're just going to abandon me? Abandon your sister? The entire family?"
I held my ground, something I've never managed to do before. "If that's what it takes for me to protect my peace, then yes," I said. The conversation quickly deteriorated from there. She cycled through every tactic she could think of, reminding me of financial help she had given me in the past, guilt-tripping me about my nieces and nephews. "They ask about you every day," and even blaming me for the impact on my father's health. This stress isn't good for his heart. The hardest blow came when she invoked my childhood. "I gave up my career to raise you. I sacrificed everything for you," she said, her voice trembling. But this time, I saw through it. For the first time, I recognized her words for what they were: emotional manipulation. I didn't give in. I told her I would still send birthday cards to the kids but needed a complete separation from the adults in the family for the foreseeable future. "How long is that going to be?" she pressed. "Until I've had enough time to heal," I replied, "and until everyone understands that I'm more than just the family's babysitter." The call ended abruptly, but instead of feeling devastated, I felt lighter, like a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I took similar steps with the rest of my family. I blocked my sister and cousin on social media, deleted old family group chats, and filtered their emails into a separate folder I can check when and if I'm ready. For the first time in years, I have complete control over my time. My phone is no longer a constant source of stress, buzzing with demands from my family. It's just a phone again. This newfound freedom has allowed me to reclaim parts of myself I had forgotten. Last weekend, I joined a local hiking group and spent 6 hours climbing a trail I've always wanted to explore. I've enrolled in a photography class, and my instructor told me I have a natural talent for composition. We're even planning a group exhibition next spring. I've started dating again, something I avoided for years because my family always came first. And I'm not postponing plans for anyone anymore. The only family member I still talk to is Jean, who reached out recently to share her own experience of cutting ties with toxic relatives. Her words validated everything I've been feeling and reminded me that walking away from people who don't value you, family or not, is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. This journey hasn't been easy. There are moments when I miss my family, like when I see something that reminds me of my nieces and nephews. But then I remember how they were willing to exclude me from family events while still expecting me to sacrifice my time and energy for them. That realization keeps me grounded. For the first time in my adult life, I'm prioritizing myself. I've started planning a 5-year goal for the first time ever, pursuing a master's degree and taking a solo trip to Europe in the spring. To those of you who've supported me along the way, thank you. Your advice and stories gave me the courage to make these changes. This will be my final update because I'm ready to close this chapter of my life. It's time to focus on my own story. One where I am the main character, not just a supporting role in someone else's drama. My family treats me like a doormat. Now they're planning a cruise without me. I refused to babysit and chose self-care, setting boundaries and focusing on my career and health.